This is Big Podcast.
My radio career started off as a promoter. I was also doing at that same time what we call street promotion, hype, which is going out, advancing shows, getting people excited about a band who's coming to town. Anyway, there was a band called Sheep on Drugs, which I thought was brilliant. Great act out of England. They had a song called 15 Minutes of Fame. It was exactly 15 minutes long. Everybody's got 15 minutes of fame, according to Andy Warhol. We're going to talk about it on this episode. It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. You want to grow your podcast? You want to get more people to your podcast? You want to make more money with your podcast? You are in the right place. I'm David Hooper. BigPodcast.com is the website. And this episode, the audio edition of my weekly newsletter, that's called Big Podcast Insider. It goes out every Friday morning, New York time. This is issue number 192. All the links, more information on everything that I'm talking about, you can find it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Here's what I'm going to cover. If you do one thing on your next episode, your podcast featured. Grow your podcast with a comment section, a 30-second newscast template, which also works if you want to go longer than 30 seconds. YouTube versus audio podcast. Life after Hawk Tua. Also some classified ads, things that will help you to grow your podcast, get more people to your podcast, make money with your podcast. The things that this podcast is about. This episode of Build a Big Podcast brought to you by Riverside.fm. A virtual studio that makes recording and editing at the highest quality possible, accessible to anyone. You want to look and sound your best. When you're having your 15 minutes, you got to make the most of it. And you'll do that with Riverside because Riverside records you and your guests locally, bypassing poor and unstable internet connections. Somebody's on Netflix, somebody's playing a video game. Not a problem with Riverside. You're going to look and sound your best because you're recorded as if you were in the same room, and you're going to sound like you're in the same room. Studio quality recordings, lightning fast editing, 4K video resolution, instant transcriptions powered by AI with 99% accuracy. That's better than me doing it. Also faster and cheaper. You want to try this out? You can try all of it. Kick the tires, look under the hood, get a couple of interviews in. The free account, which you can get at Riverside.fm, they're going to give you a couple of hours to look around. See what you think about it. If you want to stick around, I've got a discount code for you. It's going to get you 15% off. To get that free account, Riverside.fm, the discount code BIGPODCAST, BIGPODCAST. That's Riverside.fm. The discount code, Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. All right, we're doing it, going from thing to thing to thing. You know how it works. And in between those things, I've got a demarcation point that sounds like this. That's how you know I'm going to the next thing. That's how you know if you want more information, go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Did you get that? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Have I said it enough? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Don't write it down. I'll say it again. Ready? Here we go. If you do one thing on your next episode, even if you are interviewing people, you have guests, you still want to come across as an expert, and you can't come across as an expert or an authority or as somebody that people are going to trust if you get somebody's name wrong. And I see this again and again and again and again. I've done this. Listen to this. I messed up a name. Let me give you the backstory on it. An Irish singer. And when you think of an Irish singer, and there are a lot of them, I was thinking of Sinead O'Connor in this case because I was interviewing a woman named Maureen O'Connell. O'Connor. And once you get in your head, is it O'Connor or is it O'Connell? You're in trouble, man. I talked about this in the last episode. I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I didn't play you this clip. Check this out.
David, we got about 6 minutes.
We are good.
Okay.
6 minutes for this segment.
Okay.
6.5. 6.
Just getting ready to...
Where we stopped.
The show is Music Business Radio. I'm your host, David Hooper. With me today, Maura O'Connor. She's an artist on Sugar...
Did it again.
Thank you, guys. Did you get that? All right, great. It's David Hooper, Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for experts. Amy Broghammer. See, I messed it up. Hamer. Broghammer?
Broghammer.
Oh, I said it right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's going in the outtake. It happens to the best of us. Personal and company names, especially with these .com companies. You know, all the .com domains, they're gone. So people are making up all sorts of names. Well, get it right, man. Get it right. Verify it ahead of time. I talked more about it on the last episode. You want more thoughts on this, me going a little bit deeper? The best way to get it is to subscribe to this podcast. It is free. You can do that at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Go there now and get it. Let's continue speaking of names. Haley Welch, do you know that? You may not recognize it, but you're going to recognize her. The Hawk Tua girl. She's having a good run right now. She's getting up to $30,000 per appearance that she's doing. I've actually got a strange connection to Haley, and I'm going to talk about that later in this episode. By the way, can I do anything for you? Let me know. Mastodon, Blue Sky, or Threads. Those are the best ways to get me. Also, bigpodcast.com if you want to go direct. all the links. Yeah, that's right. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Let's talk about Big Podcast AMP for a second. This is the best and cheapest way for independent podcasters to work with me. If you like the newsletter and if you like the podcast, you're going to love Big Podcast AMP. It's the audio monetization program. You want to make money with your podcast, getting to the place where listeners are, going to speaking events. AMP is a personal coaching program that will help you do that, making more money with your podcasting talents, also growing your podcast audience, getting people talking about your podcast so they can grow it with you. I've got all the details at bigpodcast.com/AMP, bigpodcast.com/AMP. Your podcast featured. Speaking of getting more people to your podcast, you probably heard of Pocket Cast. It's a great app. Here's what you need to know. They are looking to feature new and emerging podcasts or podcasts that are beginning a new season. If you've got 1 or 2 episodes or an episode in a trailer in your feed, you can be considered for this. You can submit your podcast with a podcast share link. If your podcast is not available on Pocket Cast, I've got a way for you to submit it. This is issue number 192. You're going to find this information at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is a great opportunity for you to get new listeners to your podcast, and I will tell you why. Somebody's got a podcast app, Pocket Cast in this case. They're already listening to podcasts, not just listening in general, but listening right then. And they see your podcast, and all they've got to do is click one button to listen. It's a great opportunity for you. It's not going to cost you a thing. You can be featured on the podcast app. I've got the info. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue number 192. Grow your podcast with a comment section. For podcast creators who want to grow their audiences, building a stronger relationship with listeners and fans goes a long way. When I mentioned Big Podcast AMP, one of the things that I help you do in that is get other people to talk about your podcast. That is what people are doing in the comment section. It's one of the reasons why comment sections are so powerful. It's like the dance floor to disco club. Everybody is part of the show, not just the band on stage, not just the DJ. Yes, there are some downsides to a comment section. You've been on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about. The comment section on YouTube can get ugly. It is a cesspool, but also a lot of great stuff in there if you're willing to jump in. And if you are, I've got more information on how to make the comment section work on Spotify. This is brand new. A lot of people are listening to podcasts on Spotify, especially younger audiences. This has been happening for a while. I remember seeing a guy in the gym. It's like 5 years ago. Not a podcasting fan, but listening to podcasts. And I had a podcasting related shirt on. And I know this guy. So he said, "Hey, man, is that your podcast?" I said, "Well, it's the company. It's something I'm working on." He said, "I just started listening to podcasts." I said, "Oh, yeah. How are you listening?" "Spotify." I couldn't believe it. This dude's probably in his 60s on Spotify. So people are listening and they want to talk about it. More information about the comment section at Spotify and how to take advantage of it. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 192. A 30-second newscast template. This is some great advice from an audio journalist here in Nashville. WPLN is the station. Emily Siner is her name. And if you've heard anything that's coming out of WPLN, Nashville Public Radio, and they've got some good stuff, Peabody Awards. I mean, they're doing really well. The new season of Serial came out of Nashville. Emily's there in the WPLN office, and she's got a template. I want to share it with you. I've got a graphic at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue number 192. Something like this could make a good segment within existing episodes if you've just got a shorter news segment that you want to cover. And she does it for 30 seconds, but podcasting, not like radio. We can go 60 seconds, 90 seconds. That's still not a lot of time. So your info is compact. It gets to the point. You deliver something very quickly. But it's not going to be as tough for you to do it as if you were doing 30 seconds. 30 seconds is tough. So let's take a look at it. This is what she suggests. It's a 5-step process. An opener, that's the newsiest tidbit that you need to know now. So for example, the Hot Tua girl. A woman from Tennessee is having her 15 minutes of fame. Let's talk about it. Then, number 2, the details, basic info, who, what, when, where, how, or how much. Haley Welch came to Nashville. Nobody knew her name. The next day, thanks to a viral video, she's making $30,000 a night. Boom. Context, how do we get here? How does this connect to previous events? Why does it matter? The 4th thing, sound, that's optional. 8 to 20 seconds of good tape. Haley's got it. You've heard it, right? Yeah, check this out.
Give him that hawk tour.
Number 5, the future. What comes next? I'm going to talk about that here in a second. 15 minutes. Tick, 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 tick. Can you extend it? Plenty of people have. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Anyway, that is the 30-second newscast template. I've got it linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue number 192. Number 1, opener. 2, details. 3, context. 4, sound. That's optional. And 5, what comes next? What's in the future? Take a look at the graphic. Get in writing. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Issue number 192. YouTube versus audio podcast. Speaking of things you need to look at, another joke. You know, I got a little humor in every newsletter. This joke never gets old because it's so important. People referring to videos on YouTube as podcasts. And this works 2 ways. This is why I'm mentioning it. Both consumers and creators get confused about this. I don't have a dog in the fight. If you want to call a YouTube video podcast, great. That's great. But if you're going to say podcast to some people, they're going to look on Apple Podcast. They're going to look on Pocket Cast. You say, I got a podcast. Okay, great. They're assuming it's audio only. Not that podcasts can't be video. We've always had video podcasts. Since podcasting was invented, instead of an audio file in the feed, there's a video file. So that's always existed. However, due to the limitations that we had in 2005, we didn't have fast connections as much as we do now. People didn't have video cameras in their pockets like they do now. Audio was easier to produce. It was easier to download. That is why when people think about podcasts, they think about audio. So if you're going to call it a podcast, but it's on YouTube, let them know it's on YouTube, especially if you're only on YouTube. Otherwise, you're going to be missing out on some people who are looking for you via those traditional audio-first platforms. I'm talking about Apple Podcasts, Spotify, those traditional type apps, Pocket Cast I've mentioned a few times on this episode. Basically, let people know where to get you. Don't just tell people, get your podcast wherever you get your podcast. Send them somewhere. This is why when I talk about subscribing to this podcast, Build a Big Podcast, and by the way, feel free to swipe this page. Take it, put in your info, use it. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That is where I send people to. You may, depending on your audience, want to call it bigpodcast.com/follow. Some people are calling a subscriber to a podcast a follower, or a subscription a follow. So know your audience. If you want to see the related joke, I've got it for you. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue number 192. Life after Hawk Tuah. The Hawk Tuah girl, she is getting paid. At least right now. As I mentioned, $30,000 per appearance. Not bad. I've got a video linked. A video, not a podcast. It's on YouTube, but you can find it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue number 192. And it shows what has happened to her since she went viral. I didn't know that this video was shot in Nashville, about a mile away from me. I didn't know until I saw this video that I actually know her manager. Now, this guy stepped up, or they connected somehow after the video took off. So she's been very smart about that, and that's what I want to talk about. It sounds like she is taking the whole thing in stride. She's got some good people helping her take advantage of the opportunities that she has right now. Like I said, I know the manager. She is in good hands. How long is it going to last? I don't know. I've got her Instagram linked. I want you to take a look at it. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue number 192. It's going to give you an idea of her media appearances and her charity work. She is making the most of this. One of the things that she said on the video that I saw, she said, people think I've just got 15 minutes. Well, I'm going to take advantage of that, make the most of it. She's doing some charity work for rescue dogs. Great, take advantage of it. That's what I'm talking about with you right now. When something happens, you've got to take advantage of it because you've only got so much time. And I'm not talking about Haley, I'm talking about all of us. I've been self-employed for 25 years, and there are times when I have been hot, and there are times when nobody would piss on me if I were on fire. If you last long enough in the podcasting space, or in the entrepreneur space, or in the entertainment space, the radio space, whatever, there are going to be times when people care about you, and there are going to be times when people do not care about you. The way to keep moving forward is to strike while people care. Take advantage of that momentum. As I mentioned, she's got a pretty good attitude about this. She's calling her company 16 Minutes of Fame. She's trademarked the phrase Hawk Tuah. So all the merch that is being sold right now, I guess she's got legal options if they're bootlegs or something like that. I don't know. She's got some stuff with Spencer Gifts, which is great. She's taken advantage of it. They've done it relatively quickly. Is she going to move forward? I don't know. She had a funny video. She seems like a really nice person who's able to work with media pretty well. Why I bring that up is because you, as a podcaster, should this ever happen to you, you're going to have a lot of the skills in place that you need to take advantage of something like this. Best wishes to Haley. I feel like she's done well. I think she's going to continue to do well. What that looks like, I don't know. But before this video, she was working at a spring factory. Literally, springs, making springs, bed springs, industrial springs, I don't know. Coiled up metal. And now, $30,000 a night doing appearances. Not a bad run. I've got her video. I've got the video with more information about how she's taking advantage of the situation. I've got the link to her Instagram. All of it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 192. Classified ads for you, things that will help you to grow your podcast, get more people to your podcast, make a podcast that people care about. You need a website. As I mentioned, you need to tell people where to go. It is best if it is a .com domain name, the name of your podcast, .com. That makes it very easy for people to find you. And one of the best things for them to find when they go to that domain, a custom site for your podcast via Podpage. You can join over 25,000 podcasters to automatically create a beautiful listener-friendly podcast site from your RSS feed. It is the simplest way to create a podcast website. You will be up and running within 10 minutes. Editing it out, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Within an hour, you're going to have a great-looking webpage for your website. You can try it for free. I've got everything linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. How about episode notes? You're going to need those for your Podpage website. I recommend Cast Magic automated episode notes. 35,000 podcasters have used Cast Magic to not only automate episode notes, but also highlight clips, podcast summaries, blog posts, social media posts, and newsletters. You upload your podcast audio. Cast Magic does the rest. It's very easy to use. I've got a free account for you to check it out. You can get that at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Hey, when you're ready, here's how I can help you even more. I talked about Big Podcast Amp. Take a look, man. Let's make something big happen for your podcast. Make more money, spread your message, get more people to care about what you're doing. It sucks to be ignored. I'm going to make sure that you're not ignored. Again, it's called Big Podcast Amp, the audio monetization program. It's personalized coaching for indie podcasters to help you grow your podcast audience, build your authority, brand, and reputation, make money from your podcasting skills. The most money you make in podcasting may not be from your podcast. It may be something like Haley's doing, personal appearances. It may be doing voiceover. Who knows? But you've got opportunities, and I can talk to you all about them at Big Podcast Amp. Take a look, bigpodcast.com/AMP. Hey, thanks for listening to Build a Big Podcast. You want to make sure that you never miss an episode, and you do, right? Let's be honest. It sucks to miss episodes. You don't have to listen to it, but you don't want to miss it. Here's how to make sure that you don't. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I've got 3 buttons for you, one for iPhone, one for Android, one is an RSS feed. Click the one that you want. I will deliver the podcast in that way to you. Always on time, always free. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Go there now before you forget. Click the button that you want. iPhone, Android, RSS. You'll never miss an episode, and I'll see you on the next one of Build a Big Podcast.